While I, fortunately, have many amazing filmmakers I've yet to explore, I wanted to give my thoughts on who is the best I've ever seen. If you're curious what I've seen, then feel free to check out my letterbox linked down below in the description. This list is composed of the strongest catalogs in film. And yes, I said catalogs. This will be a list of the best sets of movies within a filmmaker's artistry, much more so than it is an account of their technical ability at directing. This is the more interesting topic to me, and realistically the one I'm better suited to comment on. So, top 11 filmmakers of all time. Here we go. Number 11, Martin Scorsese. Scorsese serves as the most prominent link between more art and more pop-focused films, and as such has enjoyed unending success among all walks of movie fans. My favorite Scorsese films are Silent and Raging Bull, which are emblematic of the two most prominent narrative focuses he's explored in his career. A crisis of mortality and faith in one, and a shifting sense of masculinity, founded in a deeply toxic character, where the trait serves as his undoing in the other. Scorsese films are characterized by thinly veiled facades of confidence, an air of the American dream draped in classic rock, and a condemnation of toxic masculinity. Although he has films like Shutter Island, Hugo, and Taxi Driver, which are certainly not among my favorite movies I've seen, he also has great movies such as The Wolf of Wall Street and King of Comedy, showcasing the pain in a man who defines himself through his tangible success, or lack thereof. Goodfellas and The Departed, which are among the strongest mob movies in the tradition of the genre, and The Irishman, which approaches an interesting new direction of self-referential commentary, positioned from a new, older reality that I hope he leans into further in his new film. Maybe he'll even end up higher on the list. All in all, Marty is a legend of the American film tradition and ranks among most fans' favorites. Hell, probably even higher than he does for me. Number 10, Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick is probably the most common pick to land atop a similar list, and had this been a list focusing on technical ability, the artist's actual ability within filmmaking, rather than their catalog, I wouldn't disagree. Kubrick is a name I feel like I more so need to explain why he isn't higher than why he's here in the first place. I think my biggest divergence with most other film fans comes in the movie 2001. The movie is a pretty typical best movie ever made pick, and I can understand why. It's absolutely gorgeous, and maybe the most technically impressive piece of filmmaking out there. But for me, I prefer films, stories, that make me think and feel, leaving some sort of lasting impact on me, rather than those I appreciate for their craft. I believe 2001 underwhelms on that front. But what do I like about Kubrick? Kubrick movies are characterized by their rigor, scathing social commentary, and immaculate visual design filled with unique imagery and personality. My favorite film is Eyes Wide Shut, followed by A Clockwork Orange and Barry Lyndon. Barry Lyndon features some of the best cinematography ever and one of the most expansive character arcs of the era. Clockwork has maybe the most unique and memorable style I've ever seen in a film, with a complex, corrupted protagonist who's as off-putting as he is gripping to watch, with thought-provoking ethical questions throughout. Eyes Wide Shut I see as Kubrick beating Scorsese at his own game. The film is controversial, but I see it as his best work, as well as easily his most entertaining. I know that's a hot take for his best work, but hey, Kubrick himself agrees with me at least, so that's something. The movie is an exploration of male sexual insecurity and jealousy, showing the futility and pain of these emotions in the face of real, grounded attachment to your lover. Desire may never reach deep and complete satisfaction, but the controlled desire can be beautiful. Before I reveal my number 9 pick, please hear me out. I understand putting this director over Kubrick and Scorsese is a hot take and may give people the wrong idea of how this list is going to go, but please don't click off the video. This will be the most mainstream pop pick on the list, and there will only be 2 more English language directors. Denis Villeneuve is relatively early on in his career and new to the world of film, especially compared to everyone else on this list. But he's accomplished a great deal already. Part of me wanted to dishonestly put him last to avoid controversy, but I can't do that. The biggest reason for his landing this high is the movie Incendies. This is the strongest film that's featured on the list thus far, in my opinion. I mentioned earlier that I prefer films that leave a lasting impact in their thematic and emotional exploration, and this film nails it. The story of Noel is overwhelming in its tragedy, but cathartic in its inspiration. It mixes the layered cycle of violence political commentary Denis also succeeds in with Sicario, but grounds this with a much more compelling core narrative, giving us a powerful thematic statement, and among the most earth-shattering twists in film. His movie Prisoners is maybe the most consistently entertaining movie I've ever seen. It's captivating from the get-go, and it never slows down. Beyond this, it stays focused in its themes of faith and perseverance, while crafting similarly compelling ethical questions as Kubrick did with Clockwork. It's an airtight movie, with the only elements seemingly left in limbo being the ending. But for anyone who's been paying attention to the thematic narrative, the ending is hardly ambiguous. Arrival features another prominent film of his, which I see as being a twin of Nolan's Interstellar. I mean, come on, they're literally the same damn movie. But hey, being the same as Nolan's best ain't too bad. I actually haven't seen Dune yet. I'm not a huge fan of incomplete stories, but I'm excited for the completed work and the rest of Denis' career. Number 8. Federico Fellini. Fellini makes movies which understand the inmost level of human motivation, the underlying essence of what drives us, and creates this fantastical style which appropriately blurs reality to correspond with these themes. My favorite work of Fellini is his meta-narrative, 8½. I'm a sucker for stories about stories, and this film certainly delivers. The fractured, hazy trip that is 8½, explores the creative process and the anxiety and the need to be seen through your art, while also being corrupted by the fear and pressure of being seen in it. It's revolutionary, honest, and a cathartic film I'd consider amongst my all-time favorites. La Dolce Vita is a meditation on excess, on purpose, and decaying spirit. Faced with two paths in life, Marcello is crippled in his indecision on a broken path towards one of the most thought-provoking movies I've watched. And although these are often considered his two definitive films, he also has other strong efforts, such as Nights in Cabiria, Juliet of the Spirits, Amarcord, and City of Women, filling out a pretty consistent catalog. Nights of Cabiria is probably my third favorite, and the most pivotal piece in Fellini's placement on this list. Although a great movie, I found it lacking in connective tissue, outlining the actual reasons for its optimistic ending. Had these been better explored, better expressed, this would have almost certainly been one of my favorite movies ever, and landed Fellini much higher on this list. Number 7. Masaki Kobayashi. Kobayashi is maybe the most top-heavy catalog to feature on this list, but I am firmly a quality over quantity kind of guy, and the top here is very heavy. Kobayashi movies are generally social critiques, but channel this through a much more human, well-formed character that attaches the viewer to not only the commentary, but the results and understanding granted through its human exploration. His most popular work, Harakiri, featuring the indomitable Tatsuya Nakadai, is a poignant, precise critique of traditional Japanese codes of honor, putting social conventions and culture over even human life. The definitive masterpiece of Kobayashi's career, and the biggest reason he's here, comes in the Human Condition trilogy. Any of the three movies that make up this trilogy would be a phenomenal film, but the totality of the three make up for one of the highest achievements in the art form. The first movie is a balanced, realistic, and moving exposé on realism versus idealism. The second is effectively Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket on steroids, although admittedly nowhere near as funny. And the third is the climax, forwarding the depth and delivering on our prior-built exploration. Kobayashi's back catalog isn't quite as strong. Samurai Rebellion is a highlight, but Black River and The Inheritance were underwhelming. I had high hopes for The Fossil, which was extremely difficult to find, but the premise of a 3-hour film featuring a man seeking meaning in life amidst a terminal illness diagnosis seemed promising. While I don't think it lived up to expectations, as deeply satisfying finding meaning in life kind of stories are hard to pull off, it was still a good film. Still, the sheer excellence atop Kobayashi's catalog leads to his position amongst the best. Number 6. Edward Yang. Yang is a subtle, intimate filmmaker. His films are characterized in their emphasis on small action, contained, real emotion, and a consistent focus on national identity and how it pervades through people's sense of direction in life. His camera work lends towards the thematic focus in his filmmaking, tending towards longer shots and creation of a sense of emptiness, mirroring his lost characters' struggles and taking a step back in effort to capture the city, the setting itself as a character. My favorite works of his are A Brighter Summer Day and Yi Yi. The first is a sprawling masterpiece focused on the interactions of youth gangs who feel directionless and disenfranchised within a crisis of national identity in Taiwan. The macroscopic, political, and social landscape bleeding within the micro, giving us an intimate portrayal of the blurred lines between each as it raises questions of agency, responsibility, and purpose. Yi Yi deeply entrenches itself in the boredom, misery, and regret inherent within the average life, while ceaselessly searching for the beauty within it. It finds its answers in the childlike wonder and simplicity of the youngest character's insistent metaphor that people cannot see the back of their own heads, and finds resolution in his beautiful speech at the end. Although these are his clear standouts, he has a much more consistent catalog than most filmmakers. I've seen all of his movies, and each has something of value to offer. Yang creates Taipei, his city, in an intimate, honest light, and going through his filmography feels like you come to understand, at least in part, some of the city's soul. And on to the top 5. Number 5. Paul Thomas Anderson. PTA was my favorite director for a long time. He balances accessibility and artistry exceptionally well, and the performances he's gotten out of actors throughout his career have been nothing short of stupefying. There Will Be Blood is the first movie that comes to mind when discussing PTA, and it used to be my favorite movie of all time, but I've come to like it less as condemnation of immoral men stories are typically not those which resonate with me the most long term. Nonetheless, it's deserving of its praise. One of the best performances of all time, some of the most gorgeous shots you'll ever see. I mean, come on, that oil shot is, wow. A palpable duel in honest greed and evil versus dishonest friendship and manipulation marks a timeless classic. PTA films are characterized by a sense of loss, trauma, and regret that derailed the life, the pursuit of happiness of our main characters. Magnolia is a smorgasbord of familial trauma compounding on itself. The Master is his most focused movie, meditating on Freddy's inability to find a plan B after his plan A soured, and now looks to be spoon-fed answers instead of finding his own. Punch Drunk Love is one of my favorite examples of filmmaking techniques applied towards recreating a character's feelings within the viewer as a frantic, anxious style mirrors the content of the movie. Phantom Thread faces a consumption of grief over the loss of the past, contrasting the love and comfort of his mother's love, now replaced with his romance that proves challenging and cannot offer the same unconditional comfort of a mother, but outcompetes his prior primary connection in ability to provide growth. While these are his strongest movies in my opinion, he has a fairly strong back catalog. Boogie Nights is a great mix of hilarious and harrowing, and although his weakest, Inherent Vice and Hard 8 are solid efforts. Number 4. Andrei Tarkovsky. I can see the comments now. How the hell do you have Tarkovsky so low? At least in spaces of the internet I occupy, Tarkovsky seems to be the default GOAT filmmaker pick, and while he isn't mine, I can of course understand where his biggest fans are coming from. Hell, the guy I have number 1 on this list would agree with them. If this were a filmmaker talent list, it would be a contest between Tarkovsky and Kubrick for the crown. But with his relatively short catalog, I do find some others to be a bit stronger. Tarkovsky movies are characterized by a reflection of the natural world and people. Almost excessively long shots create a vacuum of feeling between the world's natural, unreachable beauty and the seemingly small conflicts of the lives within, longing for some connection with it. His films are highly metaphysical or spiritual, almost always directed towards finding the divine. Mirror is a mind-bending expanse reflecting the artist's life and its meaning, reaching as far outward as possible. Andrei Rublev is a historical epic that seeks the beauty in creation. Stalker is, well, you should check out Renegade Cut's video on it. It's really great. He's my favorite YouTuber. Solaris is a response to 2001, or maybe more of a diss than a response, and questions the formation of and reasons for what a human being is. Tarkovsky films favor a show-not-tell style, and I think you can find a lot of yourself within them. They have a similar spiritual effect as the natural world, and while I prefer a more direct approach personally, it would be impossible not to appreciate the mastery in Tarkovsky. Number 3, a late addition, a change to my criteria and why this is a top 11 rather than a top 10, Sion Sono. So, maybe I lied about Kobayashi being the most top-heavy. Sion Sono made by far my favorite movie of all time, Love Exposure. The effect the film had on me and my genuine feelings towards its merits are incomparable within all of the film I've watched. For being one of the weirdest movies I've ever seen, it is also the most meaningful. The movie is 4 hours long, allowing for far greater space and development of its ideas than movies are typically allotted, but it also zeroes in on one hyper-specific theme: idealization. Its focus on depth over breadth and its expansive space attains a more well-grounded, long-lasting effect, or point, than anything else I've seen has been able to achieve. The movie assesses how romantic love is largely often based in idealization founded in something such as parental traumas, leading to a self-destructive emotional state and frail relationships. It explores a process of self-acceptance and mutual understanding on its journey towards establishing a more legitimate basis. If you're curious why I love this film so much, you can check out my extensive review on it. Aside from Love Exposure, Anti-Porno is an excellent movie with a thorough critique of sexploitation found in its inimical industry. The direction and use of color in this movie are as fascinating as the contents of the movie are jarring. I cannot say I've been impressed with his other works I've watched, although Why Don't You Play in Hell is absurdly fun, but I have more to watch. Our runner-up, number 2, David Lynch. David Lynch is so great because he's the only artist on this list that girls at the bar care to talk to me about. But no, David Lynch is the master of surrealism. In my books list, which you should check out, I called Franz Kafka the literary David Lynch, and the reverse is just as true. His films are very much Kafkaesque. Lynch films are characterized by an evocation of fear in the seemingly safe and ordinary societies they take place in. He uncovers the evils lurking the halls of our very homes. Eraserhead is Lynch's atmospherically and visually intensive self-therapy towards his own fears of fatherhood, and maybe it's because I relate, but it's one of the most visceral showcases of an artist putting their emotions within the viewer I've ever seen. Mulholland Drive is generally considered his masterpiece, meditating on the culture of fame, jealousy, and the impurity, the dishonesty, typical of success and the longing for it. Twin Peaks, maybe this is his masterpiece, is an opaque soap opera / murder mystery, which I really don't care to try to define in a sentence. It's one of the most unreachable works of art I've experienced, but it's much of everything I've mentioned thus far. Inland Empire is usually considered his most unreachable work, but I actually found its core message pretty clear. Art is a powerful tool that can create truthful, grounded change within the hearts of people. His back catalog is fairly strong. I don't love The Elephant Man. It feels like a darker Disney movie to me, but ironically, I really like his Disney movie, The Straight Story. Yes, I'm going to call Blue Velvet back catalog. I know I'm wrong, and it's really popular, but it's quite overrated in my humble opinion. And Wild at Heart is genuinely one of the most fun movies I've ever seen in how patently absurd it is. It's probably my favorite Nick Cage movie. He's a phenomenal artist and a hilarious person. Honestly, how could you not love David Lynch? And number 1, my favorite filmmaker of all time, an opinion I strongly doubt will ever change, Ingmar Bergman. Bergman understands and creates art in a way that feels personally tailored to me. He's as intimate as Edward Yang, but as focused as Paul Thomas Anderson. His movies are characterized by an intense focus on character. The shots he's most famous for feature intense close-ups of faces, employing actors who can pull off the most precise, evocative facial acting there's ever been. His muse, Liv Ullmann, in my opinion, is the greatest actor there has ever been, and her excruciating performances in films like Autumn Sonata, Cries and Whispers, and Persona lend greatly to the merits of film's strongest catalog. My favorite Bergman movies consist of Autumn Sonata, which is a brutal, bordering too intimate expose on a damning mother-daughter relationship, featuring the strongest acting duel you'll ever watch, as the specter of reality looms over a frailly assumed love before Eva can seek out her own sense of validation. Cries and Whispers is a haunting reflection of Bergman's own mind, embracing another familial conflict, and featuring acting so human, so real, that it feels like it should be impossible to be on screen. I feel almost uncomfortable watching it. Seventh Seal is one of cinema's most beloved meditations on death and its permanence, its unknowability. Persona forces you to peer through a cloudy glass, questioning what makes a person themselves. Scenes from a Marriage questions women's agency and autonomy within the space of romantic relationships. Fanny and Alexander ponders the wonder juxtaposed with the traumas founded in childhood, and feels like a sort of culmination in Bergman's catalog, reaching back into his own childhood, in search of impetus in his own inspiration. Bergman's movies are very personal. They're founded largely in his guilt for being a little too close for comfort with Nazi party members in his youth, and his crisis of faith as God felt further and further away from him in his life. Reading about the man makes the films feel all the more personal, and in the amalgamation of his catalog, I feel connected to the person through the art in a way I don't feel with other filmmakers. Even without this, he has my favorite catalog, but this is really the exclamation point at the end when I say Ingmar Bergman is my favorite filmmaker of all time. And that's my list. Let me know yours, tell me your favorite filmmakers of all time, let me know what you think of my list, and I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.